Healthy podcast. Today's guest is Derek Pennington. Derek has his own podcast called See It Through, where he discusses mental health, drive, and perseverance. We also touch on those topics and a lot more. Here's my conversation with Derek. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me tonight.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I really do like talking to other people with podcasts and YouTube channels. When did you start yours?
So I actually started, so YouTube, I started a long time ago. I originally started that up in 2015, something like that. Originally it was just supposed to be like a let's play gaming channel, and then that kind of turned into a comedy channel, which turned into a commentary channel, which turned into a weight loss channel, which turned into I'm not doing that anymore, I'm doing a podcast. So the podcast itself I actually started January 1st of 2020, so like perfect year for it, you know.
Right.
Yeah, really good planning on my part. But I ended up doing that for a few months, and I'll be honest, I really, really enjoyed doing it. I kind of started getting in my own way with it. So first and foremost, COVID, I think, just burned me out of all things creative. I was just so kind of stressed about everything else going on in the world. I was like, I don't really have the time or energy for this year. And the other thing that I had was I was gonna say, I think this is something that with you doing a podcast too, I would be curious to see if you're kind of in the same boat as this, where it's like you feel like I'm either going to have guests or I'm not, and I can't do in between. And I thought I was going to do I'm going to have guests and that's it. And then I kind of ran out of guests. And then it was like, okay, great.
Right. Yeah, I did. I never wanted to even be on camera necessarily. So I thought, if I had a guest all the time, I could, because I'm interested in the other person. I'm not interested in talking about myself.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little bit hard when, like you said, you can't get anybody. And then you're like, oh, crap.
That was actually
have to carry this.
Yeah. That was actually that was the whole catalyst for me starting my podcast too. It was kind of same thing. It was really based off of the experiences of other people, because I was just I was noticing a trend on Twitter, because I have a lot of friends who do YouTube, a lot of friends who do streaming on Twitch and things like that. And all of them that do it as their careers, they seem so stressed all the time. And I was just really noticing this thing of like, okay, well, this is the dream job for a lot of people. So where is this weird disconnect happening? And I really wanted to kind of pick people's brains on that. And it's a very fascinating thing, because it kind of just started as that in particular, and then started to delve into mental health just in broader terms overall, and now it's kind of in that realm, and also just things that, topics and subjects and things like that may be interesting to me that kind of tie into that world,
Right. Yeah, I know. As a creator, I wonder too about how much do you stay in one lane with it? Because, people usually tell you when you're trying to market yourself or you're doing something, make sure people are clear what you're offering so they know where to go and to find it. If you do more than one thing, it can be confusing and people might not understand what you're actually trying to do.
Right.
But I've been thinking about that a lot lately, about how much, like how broad I want to be with things, how, personal interest I want to be with it. And how much, you should stay to a topic.
Yeah, that can be really challenging. Actually, one of the people that I had on my podcast, like kind of talking about how open you want to be. One of the people I had on my podcast, Wolf Chaos-on, he made this great line of like, I try to be an open book, not an audiobook, and that's kind of finding that fine line, which can be really challenging to do. And especially in this day and age and everything like that, like it just with how charged and hostile the world at large happens to be, it's like you're going to offend somebody no matter what you say. You could say the most innocuous thing, but I mean, there's people that would be offended by like Mr. Rogers at this point in time, so yeah.
Yeah, things can really snowball and you can get sucked into a topic that you just maybe wanted to touch on, but then you find yourself having to keep commenting on it and other
Hmm.
people asking you about it. So, yeah, it could kind of almost like the subject could almost take a hold of you more than you having control of it once it's on the internet.
Hmm. Hmm. That's very true. You know, that was actually something that I found really cool about your podcast, honestly, was just the broad spectrum of like, what does health mean to you? And
Right.
that was actually one of the things where I found your podcast because of Megan Ann, and then from there, like, I was able to kind of dig in and see like some really cool and interesting stories, you know. And but you've done a good job of keeping it all under that same umbrella, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I know. I thought about the same thing because when I noticed Megan Ann starting her things,
Hmm.
she early on realized I don't want this just to be about weight loss.
Right.
So I definitely didn't want mine to fall into that either because there is so much more to it.
It is such a taxing realm to be in the online weight loss realm. It was one of those things where it was so funny because when I started making weight loss videos, I was like, this is gonna be great, this is gonna keep me accountable. And then,
Mhm.
you know, the original goal that I had was I was going to kind of do weight loss, like a weight loss journey from a more comedic side of things. So the thing that I had going was once a week I would do a stupidly difficult workout that I had never done before, like find somebody's, you know, some famous influencer's workout and do that. And
Right.
it was funny, and it gave me, you know, a little bit of room to stretch the creative wings with editing and stuff like that. But I got about maybe 5 or 6 weeks in and I was like, I hate this so much. It
Really?
Yeah, you know, and the thing is, it wasn't the community that I happened to interact with directly. I met some truly amazing and kind people that are doing similar things, you know, just documenting where they're at in their processes, their diets, and things like that. But it started to really just kind of be this nagging, creeping thing in the back of my head, you know, like in the middle of the week, you just be like, okay, well, I got to get this video out by this day. And okay, what am I going to do for my workout? I think I might do this, but like, oh, is the lighting good for that? Am I going to have
Right.
time to do that? You know, and with working full time. And then it started to kind of interfere with my interests outside of that. And yeah, I've made the joke before where it's like it started to turn into a job I wasn't getting paid for,
Right.
and the fun of it went away very quickly, you know. And while I was very fortunate to meet some amazing people in the weight loss realm, like I kind of went a little hard in the paint on my podcast and on Twitter about just how toxic as a whole that community can be, and how
Right.
rough it is. Like the people that get propped up a lot of times in there that happen to be like the voices of that is really, it's like what are we actually doing here? Are you helping people, or is this just a drama channel, guys, this weight loss, you know?
Right. Yeah, because a lot of that stuff can turn so dogmatic about it. How, this
Hmm.
is how you're supposed to do it, or this is how this person that I look up to does it. So I want to, keep on it like they are. And it all turns into like a cult of thinking around
Yeah.
whoever the figure is. And if you do anything to go against it, even, in a very innocent way or just, very
Hmm.
minor, that challenges everybody's way of thinking in that group and they don't like it. So you
Hmm.
can find yourself very easily at odds anytime you try to be part of a online community.
Yeah. You know, the thing as well is like the type of content that sells, it oftentimes is the more negative stuff. Like
Yes.
negative content really is like the junk food of YouTube. It's like, oh
Hmm.
man, this is so great while I'm eating it, but I feel awful afterwards, you know. And
Yeah.
it just kind of, it seems to just keep going down that path. And you know, I've really tried to kind of analyze like why it happens to be so popular. And like the only thing, and again, I'm coming at this with the guise of I have absolutely zero mental health expertise. I'm not sure
Right.
anything like that, but I can't help but feel like it's the let me ask you, have you ever heard of the inverted values grid? I think that's what it's called. It's this kind of like, a lot of business like schools kind of teach this. It's almost like this psychology thing of like in like management courses of, okay, what values are important to you? Honesty, courage, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you look at the values that you like detest in somebody, I hate people who are late, I hate people who do this. Often,
Oh, I think
yeah,
I know where you're going.
it's stuff that about yourself
Hmm.
that you hate and you project it on other people.
Right.
And when you look at, I mean, I really can't think of a better way to put it other than a lot of these channels are just attacking obese people that
Yeah.
clearly are dealing with some type of eating disorder or some type of really difficult mental issues. And
Right.
it's just like, yeah, I get it. They may be saying some ridiculous things about diet and exercise or whatever, but it's just like, what are we getting out of this? Like, okay, yeah, we all knew that already.
Right.
So you just seems like you're kicking somebody when they're down right now,
Hmm.
and that's kind of, I've had this conversation with a lot of my friends about this that actually are in the fitness realm. And one of my friends owns his own gym. My friend Brian, who's been on my podcast before, is our head Muay Thai instructor. And like, the people that are actually in that world don't even think that way at all. Like, how can we help people? How can we teach people? How can we get people
Right.
psyched about being active and healthy and finding whatever that path may be for them?
Right. I mean, I was going to ask you, what do you think about the people who wind up, using their issues to get attention, though, too? The
Yeah,
people who use that know they're going to get a reaction about what they're doing and purposely put themselves out there showing that struggle with no intent on correcting it.
I think that it ties right into that, because that's always been my biggest gripe about it is the guys of, well, we're putting light on this to show how crazy it is. And it's that same thing of like, we have common sense, we know it's insane, you know what I mean? if,
Right.
if somebody's talking this insane trash talk about diet culture, and if you lose weight you hate yourself and everything like that,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, you're putting a spotlight on them, you're giving them attention, you're giving them what they want. The side that follows them is not going to listen to the side that follows you in any way, shape, or form. It's kind of just one of those things of, I like to think of it almost as like rival sports teams. You know what I mean? It's like, you're
Right.
not going to be able to really change the minds of people. Like, well, you're an idiot. Oh, you know what? You're right. Clearly, I should just join up with you, And so it really just kind of turns into this, like, socias versus greasers type of thing in like the health world. And really, I kind of feel like, yes, we shouldn't be giving any type of credence to those purposefully harmful things like I don't mean to name drop or anything like that, but there's immediately like, Nikocado Avocado comes to mind, right? Like he's
Right.
been, and the reason I think of him is when I went on YouTube today, I saw there was like 6 videos that people have done about him in my recommended. And it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, like I think you're kind of giving him what he wants a little bit. You know what I mean? Like we're enforcing this really awful behavior. We probably shouldn't do that.
Right.
And I feel like like the biggest thing about this that kind of like, if there's anything I could convey in it, is almost that the hollow drums are making the most noise on either side. The people that are gung-ho, I hate fat people, and the people that are gung-ho, if you diet, it's self-harm, et cetera type of thing. Like, they speak so loudly, it's almost like you think they speak for each other on either side. But in reality, a lot of people are more just like, I'm just trying to be healthy and happy, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Feel comfortable in the
Right.
skin that I'm in. And and it's more just kind of like, why don't we focus more on that, and like different ways that you can do that? Because you could do that through diet and exercise, or you could do that through some really deep self-reflection and radical self-acceptance. And both are honestly pretty necessary for making yourself happy and healthy,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because how did we ever get to the point where, like you said, if you try to diet or do anything like that, you must hate yourself, or you don't have self-acceptance. And you
Yeah,
know,
I legitimately have no idea, because that seemed to come out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, hang on a second now,
right now it's like we can't shake it.
you
Nobody
know
can ever bring up the topic without that also coming up.
the thing about that too, I'll be, I'll be blunt. It bothers me that subject in particular bothers me because like I have been dealing with eating issues, eating disorders since I was, known since I was a teenager.
Mhm.
And one of those is binge eating disorder. So when you have people that say like, well, if you count calories, that's an eating disorder. It's like, actually about that though,
Yeah,
like that's kind of helping me break the thing that I'm dealing with here. There's
right.
two sides of the coin, but I think a lot of it has to do is almost like a very strong and visceral reactionary response to just like Western beauty standards over the years and things like that. I forget where I saw it, but there was something online that was showcasing like billboards in 2020 versus billboards in like 2005. And 2005 was the typical
Okay.
like you're skinny, you're tan, type of thing. Like you have muscles, you're ripped, and everything like that. And now in like 2020, things are a lot more inclusive. You have, different shapes and sizes and genders and this, that, everything else, and just kind of being much more open and welcoming to everybody, which is great. But I think that it's almost a reaction to those old schools of thought that have still kind of held over for people in a sense.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because it's like we're two things at one time right now because you can get attacked for anything,
Hmm.
but the message everywhere is, acceptance and everybody's equal and, all of that. But at the same time, like any little personal thing that you show, you can get nitpicked for it and
Hmm.
attacked on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's kind of one of those things where I know personally there's a lot of things that I hold back from posting on things on social media and things like that, just because I know like, oh, this might make things awkward with like X, Y, or Z person.
Right.
And it's kind of just like, well, why am I so concerned about that? You know what I mean? If it's that big of a problem, they can talk to me. I'm an adult, type of
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy to try to navigate. And it's weird because I think a lot of people too kind of forget just how like really kind of new and raw this type of internet age we're living in is.
Hmm.
It's almost kind of like we as human beings have had a rapid adjustment in the way that we consume news and media and communicate with one another. So it's an all the time thing, and you have algorithms that are doing everything they can to try to get you hooked and keep you hooked and everything like that. And a lot of places have found that things that rile people up is the thing that gets them hooked and clicking through more and responding and
Yeah.
commenting and everything like that. So I think all of this is just also a byproduct of that too.
Right. I know because I think about things I may possibly post sometimes, but for me, I'm a really private person, so I don't
Hmm.
ever really feel the need to even do that. Like it takes a
Hmm.
lot for me to even do a simple post just to let people know I'm around.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I worry about, like I know what I could do to get more attention,
Hmm.
but I don't want to do it. I don't want to get sensational about anything. I don't want to make clickbait type of
Right.
titles or, insinuate that I'm going to have a total opposite opinion of what I'm going to talk about. So sometimes I wonder like who's even going to notice, sometimes because I'm not out there trying to, grab attention.
Yeah, that is been one of the hardest for things for me to grapple with too, as somebody who I feel so weird saying like I'm a content creator, but like somebody who does that, that. And when I was kind of joking in the beginning about making commentary videos, I made a very conscious decision to stop doing that because I saw myself kind of going down that negative
Right.
path. And it's one of those deals where I was thinking like, I'm going to make this video and I know I'm going to, because I would get passionate or heated about something and I'd make the video and then I would wait like a week and I'd be like, I feel awful that I made that. And I couldn't
Yeah.
tell you how many videos that I privated or just straight up outright deleted just because I was like, I can't in good faith be posting this. Like,
Right.
I need to really think about what type of message I want to put out there. And, you know, with the last podcast episode that I posted, it was really going over a lot of what we're talking about now and just the realms of, almost kind of like the negativity guised as positivity or helping and things like that. And I didn't get a huge response from many people, but the people I did get responses of, they were just like, thank you for saying this. Like and I think a lot of people are actually really fed up with dealing with negative things and are looking for more positive, constructive, outlets or
Right.
forms of entertainment or whatever you want to call it. And that makes me happy to see that it's at least starting to shift in that direction,
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good
seemingly.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we can keep it going that way. I know
Hmm.
because uh I just figure that, with what I do, that I'll just focus on what I think is the positive thing or the subject that I want to talk about, and that if it catches anybody's attention or it reaches anybody, then that's
Hmm.
good, and at least I am not bringing any negativity with it.
Right.
I know everybody's got different ways of doing things, and everybody's been told you need to do things this way or that way.
Mhm.
And the more people I talk to, the more I notice that everybody has something different. So what I
Exactly.
want to bring to the table is the fact that you can let that go. You can just
Hmm.
pick what you want from other people and incorporate that into your life. And if it doesn't work for you, you're free to let it go. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to mean anything about you or them, you know?
I totally get you. That's actually, as like while you were talking about that, that just kind of had me thinking back to some of like the past episodes that I watched of your podcast, and I'm going to apologize because I'm completely blanking on her name. It wasn't the most recent one you did, but the one before that, with a woman who does like the CrossFit training and things like
Oh,
that.
yeah, yeah, Emily.
Yeah, it was funny because I was watching that one and we were kind of, figuring out when we were going to do this and everything. I was almost just going to be like, yeah, what Emily said. All right, see ya. You know what I mean?
Right?
Because so much of it is, I know that that's obviously within like a realm of fitness and health and things like that, but that's actually been a big thing for me in trying to, make my world around me more balanced and level and positive. And that almost kind of ties into it as well, because it's that thing of like, I'm sharing my interests with Muay Thai and things like that. And I'll have people reach out to me about that. And, maybe if that's not necessarily the thing that they end up doing, if
Right.
that kind of plants the, the seed of like, hey, like maybe going to the gym doesn't mean I just have to like run all the time or do
Right.
crazy weightlifting. I can do something different and fun. And, I think that being like more like honestly just more stoked on things really
Mhm.
can be a positive influence for more people, and that energy can be really infectious. So it is cool seeing that, like, learning different things from different people and different ways of doing things. Like I love that. It's actually kind of a problem that I have, is I'll start to fall in love with stuff very, very rapidly. And then I have to kind of figure out like, okay, maybe not for me, but that's all right.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I guess at the same time, we're so used to hearing, you know, the opposite side, maybe, but
Mm,
we're used to hearing negative things a lot. So maybe if, maybe it's not something that people are disinterested in hearing the same positive message repeated and repeated again. Even
right,
if it is
right.
on the same freaking podcast.
Who cares? Yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, we've had the negative thoughts beat into our head so
yeah.
many times. Maybe we need the positive kind of
I
washed over continuously also.
Yeah, I think honestly, after the year that we've all had as well, I think we almost kind of need just like a radical antidote of, just feeling like you're getting beaten down nonstop, just, by like, I'm
Right.
stuck at home, I can't do it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think we're in for another like roaring 20s,
Yeah.
scenario once everything opens back up. So
Yeah. I mean, because I have this friend who does competitive weightlifting.
mhm.
And I would listen to the plans and things that she was trying to do. And, you always hear like you should exercise at this time of the day to get, burn the most fat. And you should exercise this way to gain the most muscle mass and things like that.
Mhm.
And she was doing this stuff seriously. And I was surprised how much her and her trainer were working on just tweaking things and the
Yeah.
little changes that she was willing to make and to see if it would be better or not work out for her. So she was constantly kind of going between things. And for me hearing that, I was like, but aren't you afraid you're going to lose ground? Like, aren't you afraid you're going to lose a couple weeks of progress,
Hmm.
of, how much you wanted to, how much bulk you wanted to have or
Right.
whatever. I don't know how
Right.
to say it. How much muscle she had. She was
Sure.
always like, she was always telling me that she always had to be careful of the size of jeans because she was, lifting so many weights and stuff like that, that her shape would change so
Yeah.
much. But she would tell me that, yeah, for the next couple weeks we're going to be doing this and that, and when it doesn't work out, then we'll just go back. But we wanted to see. And I feel
Hmm.
like for so many people, they get so dead set on having the path be like straight down or straight up for the goal that they
Hmm.
want, that they don't realize, or they don't want to accept the fact that it's going to be up and down along the way.
Yes, exactly. It's so funny that you're mentioning that because I never got into powerlifting like competitively, but I was an avid weightlifter a few years back. So first and foremost, the thing about the jeans, 100% true. Like
Right.
100%
I was
true.
like, that just sounds like a
It
headache.
it is the worst thing in the world when you have to buy jeans that are two sizes too big so your legs will fit in them, and
Right.
then you're just constantly like adjusting the upper part. So first and foremost, the struggle is very real.
Right.
So the thing about that I found very interesting, and this ties kind of back into like finding the thing that you yourself are interested in, because like my whole journey with like fitness and exercise in and of itself has been one that's all over the place. Like I started, so I actually started doing training for Muay Thai like 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, the gym that I was going to was legitimately 3 hours away from where I was living at the
Wow.
time. Yeah. And eventually, just like the mileage I was hammering on my car, I couldn't afford to do it anymore. So I had to stop. And there was no gyms like that around me. So I was like, well, I got to do something, I guess. So I just signed up at a local gym. And it was one of those 24-hour ones. And I just got into weightlifting from there. And it was one of those things where this is kind of where you need to, in the realm of, you need to find things that interest you. You also kind of need the things that are healthy for you, not only physically but mentally too. And I know that weightlifting for a lot of people 100% is super great for your mental health. And I don't want to be sound like I'm knocking it in any way, shape, or form. For me, it was not good because it really started to feed into my ego a lot. All it took was one friend at work at the job that I had at the time. He's like, dude, you're looking big. And I was just like, oh, okay. And then from there, like it was like, okay, I was researching every supplement that I could find. I was looking at different types of programming methods to get as big as possible. And I was going really hard in the paint with it. Like I was going 7 days a week, just rotating between what I was doing, never taking rest days. And I eventually ended up injuring myself. Like I tweaked my
Mm.
neck really bad, and that put a major halt on things. And then when I got better from that and I tried going back to the gym, I was so bored. I was just like, this is like, I don't
Mm.
know what flipped in between that.
Right.
Um, Fortunately, so Brian, my friend, who I've mentioned earlier in the podcast, he opened up his Muay Thai gym in October of last year, and I ended up signing up there, and it was one of those things where as soon as I walked into that, it was just like whoa,
Mm.
okay, this is what I need to be doing, because like you want to talk about how like the weightlifting causes ego. Like you never want to feel more humble. You go into a martial arts class for the first time and you get humbled very quickly.
Right.
Yeah, the two most humbling experiences of my life were going to that class for the first time and going to yoga with my wife for the first time, because that was I learned a lot of things about myself in that.
How long ago did you do that?
That was so the last time I did that was it was actually believe it or not, it was the day before we got married, because she was like, you should
Oh.
do this because it's going to be a great stress reliever. I was like, sure, I could really go for anything right now with that. So did that the day beforehand. And so here's the thing, she's really flexible and really good at doing this. And I know it's not a competition or anything like that, but when you're looking
Right.
around the room and you're just like, you're like, I'm really strong. I lift weights. I can't do any of the stuff they're doing right now. And it really just kind of shows you there's levels to things,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was
Yeah.
very, very interesting times.
And then that kind of also shows you that the whole thing is a balance, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not just about strength, but it's also about flexibility and, all of that. I think it's another good reason to keep trying new things, even if you
Mm-hmm.
think that you're good where you are, because you might find something you like even better that you didn't even realize.
100%. Yeah. That was, this was kind of one of those things where I put off martial arts just because it seemed like a pipe dream, for a
Hmm.
while. And I remember like my wife was telling me like when I started back up again, she was like, "I'm so happy you're doing this again." I was like, "Oh, seriously?" She's like, "Yeah, like because for the past 10 years you've just been like, man, I really want to do Muay Thai again. Man, I really want to do this again, and everything."
Yeah.
So yeah, should I feel like I might should probably explain what Muay Thai is for people that don't
Sure,
know it,
go
just because
ahead.
I've name dropped it a bunch of times. So it's a martial art that originated in Thailand, and it's also known as the art of 8 limbs. So it's something more, you use your fists, you use your elbows, you use your knees, and you use kicks and things like that. It's not like a traditional martial art where there's like a belt system and you're doing your yes sensei, and things like that. It's much more akin to like boxing, where
Hmm.
you go to train to become a prize fighter and things like that. And um, Muay Thai fights in Thailand are like one of the biggest pastimes there and everything. And it's one of those deals where I really kind of got interested in that when I found out, just the cool kind of reverence that there is to it as well, because it really is a much more kind of like whole on spiritual event than it would be, like it's obviously a contest. It's obviously,
Right.
we're fighting for money, but they do this really cool thing at the beginning called the Y Crew, which is basically just you showing respect to your trainer of just like, this is the person who trained me. And, there's the different movements mean different things and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
when I found out all of that, I was like, this is really cool. Like there's kind of something about this that's a little bit different. And, when I got in there and started training, this was the most shocking thing to me. Is it's like, I would go to a traditional gym, like a traditional weightlifting gym, and you would see people there, and there's like this weird kind of like tension amongst everybody. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like especially amongst like some of the big burly dudes there, of just like, oh, I'm stronger than this guy, I'm bigger than this guy, whatever.
Right.
And like you get into the gym where you're like, I'm actually learning how to fight here. Like this is going to be like that ramped up to 100. Couldn't be more wrong. Everybody there is so cool and so accommodating. And I think a lot of that has to do with just getting that self-confidence within yourself. Like I feel like a lot of people, and I'm going to apologize in advance because I feel like I'm generalizing horribly right now, but I feel like a lot of people who get into weightlifting and bodybuilding and things like that, it almost kind of can come from a place of like self-consciousness, but when you get into a martial art, or even something like powerlifting as an example, just to
Right.
make show a positive thing across the board, it's something where there's more discipline involved. There's something where there's more, you really kind of learn things about yourself and what you can accomplish. And when you start to know how to fight, it's insane how much of an aggressive edge it takes off of a lot of people, because you feel more confident in yourself, and you start to realize like the consequences of it as well. So it turns into one of those things where you're out and about at a bar or something like that, and somebody gets in your face and, hey man, let's just calm down, let's get you, what I mean, get you some water, we don't need to do this, type of thing, as opposed to, yeah, look how tough I am, or anything
Right.
like that. So
Yeah, I think anytime that we can try to incorporate more mind body connection,
mhm.
the better it is for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have anything like that you're doing, or?
Oh, I don't do anything right now.
That's all right. That's okay.
Yeah, I know. For right now, for me, it's just working, and I I just always take a minute when I first wake up
Hmm.
to not have to jump into getting ready to go to work. I give myself like 10-15 minutes to kind
Yeah.
of hang out, and I do the dry brushing thing in the morning, and I have this little routine that I do before anybody else gets up in the house.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that I'm like, that counts.
I actually get what you mean about the little routine thing, because like for me, the routine that I have every morning is making coffee. Like that's like my big thing. We have a French press, so there's just like it's really simple. You grind the coffee beans, you boil the water, you pour it in. But like
Right.
just that whole ritual of like, okay, I'm gonna get the coffee, and what coffee am I gonna choose today? Like, if I don't do that, it kind of sets my day off on a weird foot
Right.
at this point now, you know. So I get the doing things for yourself just to kind of. I think that is something that a lot of people maybe lose grasp of the importance of. You know,
Hmm.
it's very easy to want to be the person that does everything for everybody else, but like
Right.
even just finding little things here and there for yourself can be such a game changer in just how things go for you across the board, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I've gotten better about my attitude towards things because I don't guilt trip myself anymore. Like
That's good.
I didn't even feel bad saying I
That's
don't do
good.
anything
That
right
is
now. But I mean, that's the thing. Usually we'll, be in our own head so much saying you should be doing this, you should be doing this, but you're still not doing it. But you're
mm-hmm.
taking an awful lot of time inside your head, you know, you talking down to yourself and telling yourself how badly you're doing. But if you can let that go, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that helps too.
The term that comes to mind is paralysis by analysis, and that
Yeah.
is something that has held me back for a very long time. Yeah, honestly, just in all sorts of forms of things. Like yeah, I one of the big things for me for years was that I didn't have a college degree, and that just kept kind of needling me in the back of my mind of just like, okay, well, I want to go back to school. It's like, well, but I can't though, because like I'm working all the time and I don't know when I'm going to do it. And like, okay, maybe not, but I'm still really bothered by the fact that I don't have a degree. And then just like
Right.
I ended up getting a job that was an overnight job. You know, I had the time suddenly during the days where I was like, I can do this. Like I can do this
Hmm.
all online. Like I don't really have an excuse now. So instead of doing the whole, like, oh man, I'm so scared of doing this. Maybe what if it goes? Just do it. Just give it a shot. See how it goes.
Hmm.
And it was just like I managed to get an associate's degree during that time. And that was actually a really funny thing that I realized after that is it didn't make that big of a difference in how I felt about myself. That's and that was a whole completely other category that I learned of just like, oh, happiness comes from within. It's not because of material things like a very expensive piece of paper that you have now.
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, being at peace with yourself helps out a lot.
big time for sure.
Do you ever have any trouble being consistent with what you're trying to do? Do you ever still fall out of it even though you do enjoy it?
All the time, all the time. Yeah, that's something that is very challenging for me.
Hmm.
I really don't know the reasoning why as well. That's
Right.
been something that I've been working towards a lot. I'm trying to better myself with. I was listening to this really cool YouTube channel that's been helping me out. I'm going to apologize because I'm blanking on the name. It's a British gentleman, and he actually talks about Taoism a lot and a lot of the philosophies they have with that. And I was watching a video about New Year's resolutions that he did back at the beginning of the month, and it was one of the coolest things I've seen. So this is something that I've really been trying to apply to myself now, and it's been actually helping a lot with overcoming that.
Hmm.
Okay, well maybe I shouldn't do this, type of thing. And instead of being like, I'm going to lose 30 pounds this year, I'm going to, do this, like this big grand thing, it was just make kind of consistent goals that you can make. So the main goal that I had was work out more, like basically work out at least 4 days a week. Just so that way, the majority of any week that I'm doing, I've done something physically active.
Right.
And like that is something that's like, oh, I can do that. That's pretty easy. And if I don't do it for whatever reason, no big deal. No big deal. You got next week. Try it then. Just as long as you
Right.
keep kind of hammering at it and keep trying at it. But yeah, I really want to know what causes that phenomenon, especially like
Right.
in myself. That's like because there's a lot of things that I've had interest in, and like it's almost kind of like that you get bored of a toy type of thing and you put it down. You're
Hmm.
just like, okay, maybe on to the next type of thing. But I don't know. It's weird because you always keep coming back to it. I feel like.
Right. Yeah, I know. I think it's important that everybody knows that that happens to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you have the the best plans laid out for yourself, and you really enjoy the thing that you're doing. I mean, it's easy just with life and everything else just to kind of fall out of it, but it's okay to pick it up again. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be this thing where you're carrying it all the time. And once you drop it, well, you're a failure. You might as well just walk away.
Yeah, I think that is something a lot of people could really like. That's like saying that out loud is something that I think a lot of people need to hear, is
Right.
that failure is not the end for many things. And in a lot of cases, failure can be the best friend that you have, because
Mhm.
that's the type of thing where you can really like, as long as you don't let it break you, you can really learn things about yourself and really kind of recalibrate to do things better going forward, you know. Me going back to school, prime example. I tried going to college right out of high school, and I was like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I'm
Mhm.
here for. And I ended up, bailing out on it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I suck at math. I suck at science. And then I went, I went back to school like 10 years later. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, I got an A in math. Oh, I got
Yeah.
an
Oh,
A in
I don't suck
science.
so bad.
Right, right. And it's that whole thing of just like, yes, I failed out of it then, but it's
Mhm.
because I wasn't ready then. And I almost had to see the world in a different perspective to really appreciate what it was that I was trying to do and what it was I was trying to go
Right.
for.
Yeah, I love that because it's not that it wasn't in you to be able to do it. Just it might not have been, whatever the other factors were, just weren't lining up for you to be able to focus on it right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people get really worried about well, if I don't, meet this goal or something like that, everybody's going to look down on me. And it's like, I always like to kind of challenge people about that. It's that whole thing of like, okay, well, how would you talk to your friend about this? You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, would you tear them down about it? No. Why are you doing it to yourself?
Right.
If anything, if people see that you are constantly and consistently trying to better yourself, they're going to think that that is awesome, more than anything,
Right.
straight away. That's something that I think gets lost a lot of times. And those are the people that inspire me, honestly. It's not like the person that can do things perfectly right from the get-go. It's the person
Right.
that maybe has like is a little rougher around the edges, or has something in their past that they needed to kind of overcome, but they did it, and they're moving on and they're moving forward, and they're really making something of themselves now.
Right. Yeah, and you should always be positive about yourself because it hurts the people around you that love you to hear you talk about yourself like that too.
Yeah. That is something that I had to work on with myself a lot, to be honest
Right.
with you. Yeah. It was kind of one of those things where, and this isn't one of those, I'm not meaning to point fingers or anything like that, but just kind of like, that was kind of the environment I grew up in, was one
Mhm.
that was very, judgmental. Why aren't you doing like this kid is doing? Why aren't you, doing sports like these kids are doing, type of thing? And it was a generational thing, where that was
Right.
done to them, and their grandparents did that to them, and et cetera, et cetera. And I carried that with me for a very long time. And in talking with my wife and her family, and the friends that I've made over the years and things like that, you really kind of see that it's like, well, that's not doing anything for me. That's not doing any good for anybody. I'm just bumming people out. So
Right.
why don't I try to just do something good for myself instead? And you know, I think one of the things as well, tying into that, is actually doing good things and not just like saying you're going to do things, like I
Mhm.
think there's a big thing about kind of keeping those things in a sense, and
Right.
doing them as opposed to thinking on them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because it can almost feel like you're admitting your flaws or you're not trying to hide your flaws. But when you're just talking about it, but you're not doing anything about it, it doesn't get you anywhere.
Hmm. I think there's a term for it too. I'm probably going to be completely wrong on this, but I think it's confirmation bias. It's this really weird phenomenon where if you say, if you proclaim out loud you're going to
Mhm.
do something, like 9 times out of 10, you won't do it, just because you have tricked your brain into thinking you have already done it, as opposed
Right.
to, okay, well, I need to actually just get started on this and let the results speak for themselves, type of thing.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then worry about how things are going to play out also comes in, and if you keep worrying and worrying, you trick your brain into thinking that you're actually in this, stressful situation that you haven't even actually put yourself in. You're just worried about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can trick ourselves in all kinds of ways into making things harder for ourselves. Anything other than actually starting
Yeah,
the
exactly.
project.
So let me ask, is that something that you dealt with kind of in making the podcast itself? Because that is something I 1000% have dealt with in doing these types of things before.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm more of a idea person than I am a follow through person. So I'm a good person to come and ask, what should I do about this? But then, the other person goes and actually does it. I'm really
Mhm.
good at, just thinking like, oh, this would be nice, or oh, I should do this. But then it's like, you know,
It's
I've been taught also to think about things and think almost of every way that it won't work out. So then you
mm,
don't actually have to try.
gotcha. I think the issue that I tend to run into a lot of times when it comes to creative stuff is it's like you almost get like the cloud of creativity, and then you need to rein it back into a manageable box somehow. And
Right.
it's
Or
trying to
you get
figure out.
inspired and you're not at a time or place where you could do anything with it. And
Right,
then when you're
right.
ready and you've got the free time, you can't get the same inspiration and you don't get the
Yep.
same idea. And then it's like,
The
it's
shower
gone.
thoughts are very real.
Right.
um, the reason I ask that is it's funny because going back to what we were talking about earlier about having a YouTube channel and stuff like that, that was almost like the death knell for the channel. I'm gonna upload every Friday. Like,
Ooh, yeah.
yep. As soon as you say that out loud, all of a sudden it's Thursday and you're just like, oh my god, I haven't recorded, I haven't edited. Oh my god, it's gonna take me like 5 hours to get everything together.
Right.
And then like you're worried you're gonna be up until 2 in the morning, and then you send out a tweet Friday morning and you're like, hey guys, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna have a video today. It might be up tomorrow. I don't know. And it's like, so I've been very conscious with the podcast this time around, because that was another thing I kind of started panicking on, was like, oh man, I don't have a guest. Oh crap, how often can I upload these and this, that, and everything else? And it's just
Right.
like, just don't worry about it. Just upload when you can. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's kind of the whole thing of like, I've kind of I have found that if I do things that go directly against the advice that you get online for building a successful YouTube and podcast and whatever, I'm so
Mm-hmm.
much happier doing that.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
like,
because that's probably
yeah.
why people get so burnt out. Because they
Hmm.
think they have to follow that one formula. And if you're not,
Yeah.
what, the whole rise and grind attitude, everything, you got
I
to keep grinding.
that I was gonna say that. I'm just, oh man, it's so funny to me how like I really I love Gen Z so much, because there's been such a backlash against that. Like somebody posted a thing of just like, I work because I have to. I don't enjoy this. Like if I could get
Right.
paid to do nothing, I would. It's like, thank you. Just
Yeah. Oh,
thank you for
God.
saying
Thank
it.
you.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I would love that.
Hmm.
And I think that's actually something too, where I've had this discussion with a friend in the past, and I find it so fascinating that so many people want to have that career that's creatively driven, or they want to be a YouTuber, they want to do this as like their full-time gig, but it's just like there's so much stress kind of laden with that.
Right.
And I've talked about it before with my wife of like, in my wildest dreams, if this ever took off and I could make this as a career, it's like I would still keep my full-time job, just because like would never want this to be my sole form of income, because like the bottom can fall out at any time, and like
Yeah.
the winds can change in an instant of what's popular and what's not, and things like that.
Yeah, that's true. That would be a good thing. I've fantasized about not having to do my regular job, of course, but
Hmm.
yeah, you're right. The trends and what people are into can change right out from under you.
Yeah.
And then what are you left with?
Exactly. It's such a bizarre thing, especially, lending credence to what we were saying earlier, is like so much of this stuff is reactionary and drama based that
Right.
really starts to hook people in and take off nowadays. And it's just, that has such a short shelf life to it, you know. Like, how many
Yeah.
times can people complain about something before they get tired of it, or how many times can people
Right.
see the same drama nonsense before they're like, I'm done, I'm out, I can't take any more of this, you know. And that's sort of, that's an interesting thing. I'm very interested to see just kind of where trends like that are going to go moving forward. You know, is that something that's going to change at all, you know?
Right. Yeah. I know I've done some art shows and things like that. And of course, if you paint or do anything creatively, people expect you to want to be an artist or
Mhm.
have that be your career. So I would go to these art shows and they would film you and do interviews. And of course, they want to ask you, where do you see yourself in 10 years and
Mhm.
blah, blah. But I I always felt like I didn't fit in with those interviews because I was like, I think I'm going to be doing the same thing.
Right.
I'm not using this to try to get somewhere else. I think I'll be doing the same thing in 10 years. I don't
Mhm.
think I'm going to have a company. I don't think, you know, like
Right, right.
all I'm interested in doing is having a hobby that I enjoy doing, showcasing it here and there, meeting other artists, and that's it. And I think a lot of times, I know there's an interview out there that I was probably, I don't know, maybe a little combative about the question. Well, first, the guy found me. I was trying to avoid the interview.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't know who the guy was doing them. So he was able to
Mhm.
walk up to me and be like, "Oh, whose is this?" And I was like, "Oh,
Oh,
it's
good.
mine." And
Oh,
he's
good.
like,
Thank
"Yeah,
you.
you didn't do your interview."
Sure
So
didn't.
yeah, so it was this club, I think what it was, a Double Door in Chicago or something
Okay.
like that. And so I he had to take me down to downstairs to do the interview, and I'm sitting there and he's like, "All right, so blah blah blah." And I'm just like, "You know what? I don't, this isn't a big deal for me. I think I'm going to be doing the same thing and nothing's going to change in 10 years." And that's how I want it. I want this
Yeah.
to be something I enjoy, not something I feel like I have to do.
That's really awesome, to be totally honest with you.
You should try to look it up. I think it's
Yeah.
actually on the internet.
That's really awesome. You know, and it's so funny too, because it's just like that's something that, you know, just I just can't get over like the rise and grind culture thing, because it's like that's so
Oh
accurate.
yeah.
But it's like it's so ingrained in people of like, if you're not moving forward, you're not, you know, you're not living life. And it's just kind of like, I think it's cool to find some place that you're happy at and
Right.
content with. Like that's the difficult thing, and like that's the awesome thing to do, you know. Like the job that I have is relatively simple, you know. I argue with insurance companies for a living. That's
Mhm.
pretty much my job. It's nothing crazy, and I'm cool doing that. You know, it's not going to be a six-figure job, but I don't really want to be a boss. I don't really want to have all that extra responsibility and pressure and having a phone or a pager or whatever on me
Right.
24/7. You know, it's just like I'm cool with like I clock in at 8:30, I clock out at 5, and the time in between that is my time to do it. You know, like, and
Right.
that's I think there's so much pressure to like, well, you need to get a promotion, you need to move up, you need to do this, that, and everything. It's like, whoa, okay, like, but like that's cool, but ultimately, what would the cost of that be? And I think a lot of people don't think about that too.
Right. Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because that's something I'm going through at my job right now. We're going through a restructuring. So
Mm,
some positions are going to become redundant and
yeah,
no longer there.
yeah.
So that's one of the positions that I have. I work in sales steering.
Mhm,
And so it's my job is going to go up
mhm,
actually a level. So what I do, I would get more responsibilities laid on me, and it would be the thing like you said, like I would have the pager type of thing on me. You know, I would have to be like uh a store duty manager and things like that, and you know, help run the store a few days a week. I have a nice schedule now where I only
mhm,
work like Monday through Friday, um and I have most weekends off, but they keep whittling down to fewer and fewer a month
Yeah.
because our team's getting so small.
Yeah.
But it was before that I'd only have to work one weekend a month. I worked Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30, and it was sweet.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now it's like, well, all right, so your position is changing. Either you stay in what you're, I guess, like what my job entails now, it'll be the same, but it'll be a higher level. And so you can do that, and you have to do all these other extra responsibilities. You'll have to work, open, mid, late type of thing, rotating schedule all the time. Or you can just go down and, work like that. And I've been having such a hard time because I'm not money driven. It doesn't matter to me that, it'll be higher paid and, I'll have a higher status in the company. And I'm like, I'm having such a hard time deciding if I just want to see if I can do that and then maybe decide if I want to keep it or not and change. Or if I want to change right now and go and do something where I can do a job where when I'm at work, that's the time, and I don't have to bring any of the worrying about it home at the end of the day or when I'm off. And, I like doing jobs that are more physical too. So, the higher up you go, the less you get to do that. And I'm like, I'd rather be like in a warehouse doing stuff and moving things all day rather than being like, oh, look at me, I'm cool, I'm sitting at a desk. So
the two favorite jobs I think I've ever had were when I was an overnight grocery manager and when I was a bookseller at Borders Books, when I worked in merchandising with that, just because I was on my feet all the time and moving around and whatnot. And it's funny because like this is something where I actually have a lot of personal experience in, because when I was maybe like 24, I ended up getting like a retail manager job. And I had done the thing of being super gung-ho about like, I'm gonna get in this is gonna be great, like this is gonna be my career and everything like that. And I got in there, and then I realized very quickly, like, I am not cut out for this. I don't have the capacity to be mean to people. Like, the idea of firing people is disgusting to me. Like, I hate reprimanding people, like, and with me being as young as I was at the time too, I would get a lot of pushback from people that's like all of a sudden their boss is younger than them. And it's like, there's this weird kind of dynamic with that. And I kind of did the thing of like, you know what, just fake it till you make it. And then it's like, well, what happens if you never make it though? And then I eventually ended up having to take an extended leave of absence for mental health related purposes. And I was just like, I can't, like, it started getting to a point where I was just so stressed out all the time. And eventually I was just like, you know what, like, this is not worth it. Like, I'm losing my marbles doing this job. So I ended up taking a step down, and that's when I actually stepped into the overnight grocery spot. And like, it was so weird because those ideas of like, but what are people going to think? I didn't even have them, because I was just so like, I just can't do this anymore. And I don't even care if anybody thinks less of me for taking a demotion. But like, I was in that management job for like maybe 2 years, and I was in the overnight job for about the same amount of time. And like, the management job felt like I was in it for a decade, but the overnight grocery job felt like I was in it for like 6 months. And it was really, really nice, honestly, because it's like I had a set schedule, and there's just, I don't know, it was just that whole thing of, I had enough money where I could pay my bills, and that was good. I didn't have the extra money or anything like that, but it was just, it made such a difference in my mental well-being to not be freaked out all the time.
I know, because I wonder sometimes, I mean, because that's the expectation, right? To make as much money as you possibly can. And if you're not trying, then, I mean, then you're just wrong, kind of. But yeah, I feel that way too. It's like, it doesn't matter to me as long as I'm happy and I'm, like you said, I'm making enough money. That's fine. It doesn't have to be a total like ladder climb scenario every time you're in a job. I know my favorite job that I did for the longest time was just cleaning houses.
Yeah.
And it was great because every house, it was like, a clear accomplishment. for the
Yeah,
most part,
yeah.
because you'd see these rooms and you'd be like, and you'd go in there and you'd clean them and you'd be like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that. Look what I did.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
like
yeah,
you
this
have
place looks good now.
that definitive accomplishment. I did
Right.
this, Yeah, yeah. It's funny, like I think so many people get tripped up between purchases and experiences. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really kind of more like, okay, well, what do you value more? And if you want to buy yourself nice things, cool. Like more power to you. If that's what makes you happy, awesome. Go chase that dream down, man. But like I think a lot of people get crammed into that box of like that's what you're supposed to do. You need the nice new car. You need to go on this fancy vacation at a resort hotel, blah blah blah, whatever. And then you kind of think about one of my I would say I'm not meaning to go off on a tangent here, but this is
Let's
actually
do it.
something. Yeah. So this is actually something that I was thinking about a lot recently. Is one of my favorite movies. It's an animated film called "It's Such a Beautiful Day." It was made by artist Don Hertzfeldt, and it kind of starts off as like this silly, almost absurdist animated film where like the characters are really poorly drawn stick figures and stuff like that.
Okay.
The ultimate gist of it ends up being though that the protagonist actually it's alluded to that he has like a brain tumor or something like that.
Uh-huh.
But when he gets to the point of realizing that like his death is imminent, like the background all of a sudden becomes like this really colorful, fanciful, like beautiful, gorgeous looking designs and things like that. And it's almost that whole thing of he is now appreciating life for the first time and can see the world for the beauty that it is, and that the true value of the human experience is within these small experiences that we have. Like one of his favorite moments is just him sitting on a bench watching a dude blowing leaves with a leaf blower. That filled him with some type of like immense joy or contentment, and
Mm-hmm.
that was something where that hit me hard,
Mm-hmm.
because it was that whole thing of I was kind of going through a quarter life crisis when I saw that movie for the first time, and it
Yeah.
really helped me kind of narrow down of like, well, okay, well, what's really important to me? And it is things like that of just finding the stuff that makes you happy. Like when I'm watching my cat chase a beam of light that's reflecting off of my phone in the living room, like
Right.
that's like the type of stuff where I'm like, yeah, this is what life is supposed to be about, like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Luckily, I've always been amused by little things.
yep,
So
hmm,
I've always felt like I've had that kind of down pat. I've
yeah,
always been like, as a kid, I would pick anything up off the ground that was shiny or, and I'd always keep it and stuff like that. So
yeah,
yeah, finding happiness and pleasure in little things as many times as you can throughout the day is definitely a good way of looking at things that a lot of people, I think, just I don't know what happens to us when we grow up, that it's
yeah.
hard for us to realize that life isn't so bad.
I think that's one of the cool things about watching how generations like ideas and things like that shift and change, is because it does seem to be moving more towards that kind of way of thinking.
Right.
It's that beautiful thing of where, as basically as the next generation comes, they become more open. Historically, it seemed you become more open, you become more tolerant of people around you, different lifestyles and things like that. But I think inversely, it's people becoming more open and tolerant of themselves and starting to
Hmm.
find things that are like what is actually going to be healthy for me, as opposed to what is being burdened or put upon me to make me happy or this, that, or anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like a generational thing. It does seem like older generations were more burdened with responsibility and
Yeah.
making money as the main goal, and every generation kind of passes it down. Because
Hmm.
I know when I was in high school, going to college was like it was the a big deal for kids for the first time, it seemed like.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we were in high school, probably it was like that's when it first started being so expected of everybody graduating to go to college,
Hmm.
and it hadn't been for earlier generations. And so when I remember when I was trying to pick a school and get that all planned out, my parents were more like, we don't really think you need to do that, and it was just like, are you serious?
Yeah.
But yeah, I never ended up doing that. And I think it's fine.
I
But
really
like you
think,
said, I
yeah.
went to school later in life too because of it, because I felt
Yeah.
like it was something I wanted to do.
Yeah, and ultimately it was one of those things where it's funny because my path was very similar, but almost kind of the opposite. Like where
Hmm.
my parents never went to college, so they were going like mad hard in the paint about me going to college, but they had
Yeah.
no frame of reference of what I needed to do to get there.
Right.
So it would turn into a thing of like I remember it was this really really funny thing. It's an ongoing joke that actually my wife and I still talk to each other about. Is for some reason my parents really wanted me to be an X-ray tech, because
Oh
they had
my
heard,
God. I did that
yeah.
for a little while. My senior
Hmm.
year is like some kind of like trade thing that I tried
Yep.
out.
They had heard that it pays really well and the schooling is short for it, and I was like, that's
Mm.
awesome. I don't really have an interest in doing that though, is the only downside, which is really ironic because right now I actually work, like the billing team that I work for is in a radiology department,
Oh,
so that's really
funny.
funny. Yeah, so full circle a bit.
Right,
But
right.
like it was just so like instilled, like you need to go to college, you need to get a good job and this, that, and everything else. And I was like, well, I don't really know, like I don't really know like what I want to do. That I think that's
Hmm.
one of the main things. And a lot of people talk about that as well, of like you're tasked with knowing what you need to be doing for the remainder of your life at the age of like
Right.
18, and it's like,
Yeah.
whoa,
When
okay.
most of the time they act like you can't make any decisions for the rest of your life around
Right.
that time.
Right.
Hello.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it just turns into this really bizarre scenario where you suddenly have to know exactly what you're doing, and you have to put yourself tremendously in debt to do it, and then you
Hmm.
hope that there's a job market for you when you get out of that, type of thing. It's
Right.
like, oh boy, okay. And then I've had friends that they did the whole thing of the typical, went to the 4-year school right out of high school, got a degree, and then have never used it
Yeah.
once, or they tried to go into that field and they're like, this sucks, I am miserable right now.
Right.
And then they end up doing something totally different. And that's one of those things they don't tell you about,
Mhm.
when you're growing up. You just get kind of bombarded with like, you're learning subjects that aren't really interesting or aren't really applicable to the world at large,
Right.
and then you're expected to know what you need to do, and then from there, like it's funny because like a lot of the people that I'm friends with on Twitter, they're in their like mid to late 20s, and I'm in my early 30s, and they're just kind of
Mhm.
like, they're freaking out about turning 30. They're like, oh my God, like, I don't know what to do. It's like, it's not a big deal. It
Yeah,
really is
you're
not.
always going to feel the same no matter what
Yeah.
age you are.
Yep, yep, yep. Like once I hit like 23, like it's pretty much just been like consistent, like,
Yeah.
since
Yeah.
then, it's just like, okay, yeah, like, the only difference now is like I'll wake up and sometimes my back will be sore or something like that, but like otherwise, not that big of a difference. And, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to, I guess, do with my life,
Right.
outside of just trying to find things that make me happy. And I think it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you're not A, hurting people, and B, making yourself happy,
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know. There's really no answer to life, is there? I
No.
mean,
Yeah.
we're always figuring it out day to day. There's no ending point until, I guess the big one.
Right.
But
Right.
I mean, every day it's just you're just dealing with things and having to make decisions and not really knowing how it's going to play out and hoping it's going
Hmm.
to be for the best, but that's all you can do anytime.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
All right, figured it out. There's life.
Yeah. No big deal. I was gonna say,
Well,
just
we figured it all out on this one.
figured out the meaning of life in a podcast. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, just fell into it. There it
Yeah.
is.
All good. All good. Nailed it.
Yeah, I know. The people want to give people advice on how to live their lives. They don't even know what they're doing in their own.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so frustrating all around because nobody knows what they're doing anytime, and we're all just trying to figure it out, and like what is it, lobsters in a bucket type of thing?
Right.
Like
It's so funny that you mentioned the people that give advice and they don't know what they're doing, because it's that
yeah,
whole that I can't remember where I read it, but that whole thing about imposter syndrome, which is always like
yeah.
the people that need to feel imposter syndrome are not the ones who feel it, like that's
Right.
always the biggest thing. Yeah, that's, oh boy. especially jumping back, especially in the world of martial arts, that is, oof, boy, that can be some danger with that, you know?
Right. Yeah, I know that when I was growing up, I had a mom who always wanted to be like, you know what you need to do? This is what you need to do. This is your problem. And I never wanted that. I always figured, I'd figure it out. I'm pretty laid back when it comes to that, but I don't like that kind of energy of somebody telling me you need to do this.
Right.
So.
Oh, sorry if that weird noise. I say my wife had to take our dog to the emergency vet, and he's very thirsty right now, apparently. So
What?
he's fine. He has the grace of a hippo, and he hurt his foot jumping off of the bed. So
Oh no.
he's okay. He's a big baby, but he's fine. So,
Oh, okay.
if you couldn't tell by the tone of my voice, this is not the first time this has happened. So yeah, but yeah, all of a sudden I just heard this like, what the heck? And it's like, it's just lapping up all the water he can right now. But
oh, okay. So let's see here. Do you have anything that you know isn't great for you, but you still can't help but do it anyway?
Food, eating junk food is the big one for me,
Eating junk
honestly.
food.
Yeah, that's been one of the big struggles for me. I try to be really open about what I deal with when it comes to like eating issues and things like that, just because I feel like I don't want to like obviously glorify it or celebrate it or anything like that, but it's kind of that thing where, especially with like guys, that stuff just doesn't get talked about.
Mm-hmm.
It's very real. So the problem that I have is kind of using food as a coping mechanism a lot of times. It's gotten a lot better over the years, thankfully, but like there's still times where I will go off the rails, with what I'm eating, and I'll have a good week, and then I'll get to the weekend and it's just like, oh boy, here we go, strap in, type of
thing.
The
weekends are hard, aren't they?
They're very difficult, and one of the things that's very challenging about this is at one point in time, I think I can safely say that I actually had a food addiction at its absolute worst. And the difficult thing about that is there's no abstaining from it. And that's where it can get really tricky, because you have to eat every day. Otherwise, you will die, type of thing. So it's kind of like you have to test the waters of like, okay, like what is going to be something that triggers me and can make things kind of spiral out of control. And I'm very happy with the progress that I've made on that, for sure, but it's something I definitely know I'm going to have to work on realistically for the rest of my life, and coming to terms with that, of just kind of like, the joke about like, well, just do everything in moderation. It's like super cool. Can't do that. That's just kind of the, like kind of the thing, but that's okay. I don't expect people to really understand that unless you're in it, and you can see just kind of, I think the hardest part about that is, that it doesn't make any sense when it's going on, or when you're dealing with all that stuff, but it just still kind of keeps happening. You know what I mean? Like, do you have anything like that
I've dealt with that too, and I totally understand what you mean, where you recognize yourself doing it and kind of know you shouldn't be doing it, or even I know that lately after the holidays that I haven't been doing the best with things, but I've noticed with like the stress of the changes at work and stuff like that, I noticed I started, going to food a little bit more.
Yeah.
But the way I tried to deal with it was changing some of my habits.
Yeah.
To just have other things to focus on, something new. So I've stopped drinking tea in the morning, just like the past 2 days. And I found some nice teas that I wanted to try instead. So I'm kind of breaking the usual pattern of my behavior to kind of knock that other one out, like putting my day on a different track to try to go around it a different way.
Yeah. I have to ask here, is that kind of tied into the podcast episode you did with Golden Grocer? Is that right? Where she
Yeah.
was, I was fascinated by that, just going over the different levels of tea and kind of like
Yeah,
how,
there
you
was
know,
stuff
like
I never even knew about.
crazy. And that's like, so as soon as I hear that, I'm like, oh yeah, because that kind of got me thinking the same thing, especially with
Yeah.
just kind of like the absorption issues and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
certain types of tea, and like that stuff was fascinating to me.
Oh, good. I'm glad you
Yeah.
liked it. Yeah, I know. I really feel like the more people you can talk to about things, everybody's got so many little chunks of valuable information and perspectives on things that
Hmm.
if you don't expand your view, you'll never get, to touch upon those things. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it is really important to get a lot of different people's perspective when it comes to health. And I feel like I've talked to people and they've helped me realize that there's just so many different ways to do it. And if you stay on the one way and you know do what you're comfortable with all the time, you could be missing out on so much. Like
Yeah.
all that, yeah, like you said about the absorption and stuff like that. Like, oh my God,
Mm.
I never even would have considered that.
I think one of the big things too is it's not a one size fits all thing for people as
Right.
well. That was something that's always crazy, and especially with getting like diet and fitness advice from YouTube, that can be very dangerous for a lot of
Yeah.
people. You're like, you need to be vegan, you need to be low carb, you need to eat carnivore, and this is
Mhm.
why. And it's just like, okay, like let's pump the brakes here and actually like, you know, and I've known friends that, I have friends that have been vegan for, like, one of my friends has been vegan. I think he just celebrated his 10-year anniversary with that, and he couldn't be in better health.
Mhm.
I had another friend that tried it for a year, and she had to stop because like her hair was falling out and she was just
Right.
tired all the time. And, I've had friends that have done the low carb thing with great success. And then I've had friends that, like I've tried to do the low carb thing before, and it's like, I've lost weight, cool, gained it all back, and I felt like super lethargic the entire time,
Mhm.
and it's just kind of like you got to really find what works best for you in any given scenario,
Right.
and it's a lot of trial and error, and there's not really a 100% perfect path for everybody. You just kind of try to find the best that you can.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's such a funny thing because it would be so much nicer if there was just one answer. And that's
Mhm.
what everybody's really looking for. Like, I'll
Yeah,
do it. Just tell me what the right way is.
yeah,
But yeah, it's a touchy thing that,
yeah,
you just got to feel it out and see what works for you. Like you said, I can't really do I can do low carb, but I can't do no carb. I can't go
yeah,
that route. I like
yeah.
things can't be completely off limits for me. That
Hmm.
just turns things into a whole other issue, with
That is something that is a very sneaky way to do some harmful stuff to your brain too, because when you
right.
start looking at things in terms of like super strict black and white, good and bad, I
Mhm.
cannot have like my wife jokes about it a lot, but she's like, if you're doing a diet where you can't eat fruit, you probably shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
But when you look at things of like, and obviously this can differ for people, like if you have celiac disease, like, yeah, don't eat
Hmm.
bread. But at the same time, like, it's just that whole thing of, if you're conditioning yourself to think like, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, and then what happens if you do eat that? Do you feel a tremendous amount of guilt? Do you feel, oh my god, I'm screwing everything up? And it's just kind of like, okay, like chill, like find some balance.
Right.
I think that has been one of the biggest things. I know we're very new into the year here, but that's one of the things I've been really happy with myself that I've done since the beginning of the year. Is I'm really, in trying to find dietary things that work for me. I'm really just focusing on, like, I don't care if I lose weight. I don't care. What is making me feel good? What is making me, when I go to work out, I can really power through it? What's
Right.
making me when I'm at my desk, not making me feel like I'm going to fall asleep at my desk, and just finding things that do that. And that has been very empowering in a weird way, of
Hmm.
just kind of like, I'm not worried about what my carb count looks like. I'm not worried about what my calorie count looks like or anything
Right.
like that. If I feel sluggish one day, maybe don't eat as much or adjust what you're eating or this, that, and everything else, So
Yeah.
eating way more bananas this year than I ever have in a long time. But
Oh yeah, I saw that you tried some smoothies, huh?
that has been so I've turned into that guy now, and that's been fun. That has been one of the biggest game changers in a successful workout for me.
Mm-hmm.
Muay Thai is a very cardio intensive workout. It's a
Okay.
lot of like high intensity interval training types of workouts. Like usually what we'll do is we'll go for like a couple of rounds. So like the last time we went, I did 4 minute rounds with a minute rest in between. And that entire 4 minute round, you're chasing somebody down who has pads, and you're throwing punches and elbows and knees and kicks and everything
Mm-hmm.
else. And about halfway through that, you're so it was one of those things where before, when I would try to do a workout, and I was because I was very into low carb for a bit, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I was going to pass out, and then I was like, this is not good. So this time around, I had the banana in the smoothie, and I had some blueberries, and I had just like a lot of fruit in there, and I was like, I'm good, like I'm feeling good right now, and it helped
Mm-hmm.
me get through that. And it's just so funny because that it goes back to that mindset thing of me from a couple of years ago would have been scared to even make that because there's so much sugar and carbs, and that's
Right, right.
bad. That's a bad group. But now it's like that made me feel great, and it made my workout great, which it's that whole thing of that makes me feel like I'm doing better because I'm able to
Right.
accomplish something I wasn't able to before.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because food's energy really when it comes to the end of the day, and a lot of times we try to make our bodies run in a way that it's not really meant to do, right? We're supposed to have
Hmm.
some carbs to have some quick energy and to have some other stuff to have long lasting, energy too. And so whenever
Hmm.
we try to like break parts of it out, our bodies are probably just like, what the hell do you want me to do with
Oh,
this?
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny because it's just like I'm going to apologize in advance. I don't mean to get gross, but like when I fell down a rabbit hole with this carnivore diet thing that I
Uh-huh.
saw. I never went on it, but when I heard
Okay.
about it, I was like, this is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. Please tell me more about this.
Uh-huh.
And so I fell down like you're hearing people, they're like, yeah, I went on the diet. I feel great. I literally had diarrhea for 6 weeks straight, but I feel great now. I feel
Oh my
great.
gosh, that's
It's
not a red flag. That's
yeah,
not a
it's like,
deal
whoa,
breaker.
whoa. You just kind of glossed over that really major thing there. That
Yeah.
sounds like an absolute living nightmare. Like
Right.
what are we doing here, people?
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's cool. This is
Just
fine.
continuous diarrhea.
Continuous diarrhea. My grocery bill's like $400 each time I go because I'm buying nothing but ribeye steaks. It's fine though. This is how we're supposed to eat. Plants are the devil. Like they're literally poison. Wait, oh my god. I just like the thing is, I say that jokingly, but
Hmm.
that's literally a thing that I read. That is
Oh
literally
my
a thing that people.
gosh.
Yeah, like it's just like what? Why? Just how did we get to this point where we're thinking that apples are bad? The thing that keeps
Mhm.
a doctor away
Right,
is the thing
right.
that's bad now. But that was one of those ones where I oftentimes find things like that I can kind of just like really nerd out about for some
Hmm.
reason, and that was one of those ones where it's like, oh boy, this has got my interest now, and I don't know why, but I really need to find out more about this.
Right, right. I know. And see, and that's why I feel so funny about supplements too, because people a lot of times can feel like if they're taking those, then they don't need to be eating,
Yeah.
fruits and vegetables and things like that. And I've heard a
Hmm.
lot of arguments against it too, that our soil's depleted anyway. There's no vitamins and minerals in it. So
Right.
I take this supplement that has it all. And so now I'm in
Yeah.
good health now. But it's
I was
just
gonna
like,
say I've really pared down my supplements that I take. I'm
uh-huh.
pretty much to the point where I will take vitamin D just because I live in the Midwest, and pretty much anybody that lives in the Midwest should be taking that just because we do not get enough sunshine. I'll take vitamin C just for immunity boosting, and I will take a B vitamin, and that's like my pre-workout at this point.
Right.
But you kind of go back to when I was lifting weights all the time and stuff like that. I had like a mini pharmacy on my kitchen counter at any
Mm-hmm.
given time, full of who knows what. And that's actually
Right.
something that's very scary about the supplement industry too, is like just like a lot of those things are, it's kind of like the Wild West. You don't really know
Right.
what they're putting in there or how vetted it actually
Mm,
is, like you could go to a health food store or something like that, probably going to be safe. You're probably going to be, you know what I mean, like 9 times out of 10 you're going to be a-okay. But
mhm.
like you go to a store and you get, the mass gainer 6,000 workout pills, and it's just like cool, this is probably going to, it's honestly just probably sugar in a capsule at best, and at worst it's going to give you tremendous liver damage, and it's
Right.
just like, that's so crazy how it's like, well, I'm taking this for health, and it's like, but are you though?
Right. Yeah. Just because it says those nice words on the label doesn't mean that's
Mhm.
actually what you're going to be giving yourself, especially
Yeah.
when you can take into consideration your organs and
Oh
things
my
like that.
gosh,
The amount of work we expect our organs to do is insane.
it's insane. And I know you're gonna immediately know what I'm talking about with this here too, but when I think of like, the healthy supplements, I just can't help but think of like the influencer teas that were
Oh,
promoted on
gosh.
Instagram, the flat tummy tea and stuff like that. And it's
Yeah.
just like, that's because it's a laxative. That's
Yeah.
that's what it is, honestly. Like really
Yeah.
no kind way to tiptoe around that one. And
Right.
then
I
it's
know.
like,
I'm
but
amazed the way people are so comfortable connecting themselves to anything
mhm.
and everything sometimes just to feel like they're important, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's the brand, like the branding of things is so fascinating to me because
Right.
I remember, I can't remember the actual name of it, but it was one of those super popular influencer skin, hair, and nail vitamins or
Okay.
something, and they cost like $60 a bottle,
Mhm.
and you can get all of those things at like a CVS for maybe $10,
Right.
and it's just like all just because it has a fancy label on there, and this is like the cool chic thing to have now.
Right.
It's insane.
Yeah, I know. That's why there are little I think it's important that people accept their own little personal vices that they have that make them individuals and not like healthy robots like
Yeah.
everybody seems to want to try to be, that they need to break out of who they are to fit into this healthy box,
Mhm.
and you have to throw everything away. Like one thing that I remembered being a hot topic for a minute was the fact of having tattoos,
Yeah.
and that it poisons your body, and it messes with your body's energy flow and the
Mhm.
scarring and things like that. But at the same time, I feel like if you want to do it, just go ahead and do it. Like if
Yep.
you want to, I guess I'm pretty much a poster child. I'm like, if you want to dye your hair,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but if there's these little things that you want to do that make you an individual, I don't think you should ever really throw all of that away in an attempt to try to be this like uniform kind of construct of a person you think is the correct type of person.
Mhm. It's one of those things where going back to just the energy of happiness and positivity that, like, you can project outward when people are being their true selves.
Hmm.
That's when that is at its peak, and it is so obviously infectious when that's happening. Like, one of the biggest phenomenons I think I've ever seen is, I have a few getting tripped up over my own words here. I have a few friends that are transgender,
Hmm.
and when you see, like the before and after pictures, or like the first pictures when they start their transitioning process, and it's just kind of like, I'm looking at like a beam of light coming off of my phone
Hmm.
right now, because it's just kind of like, oh, this is a happy person. This is also the person that I should have been seeing the whole time. This
Right.
is, and it's just like, I know obviously that is a very, extreme example, just because of how much work can be involved in that process. But just,
Right.
and all across the board, just, if you're doing things to be yourself and to really just, make yourself happy, that's going to show and inspire so many people around you by doing that.
Right. Yeah. I even noticed with my daughter lately. She's
Hmm.
been trying out different things and stuff, but she said just a week ago that, I tried that other stuff because I didn't think I'd look good being the way that I wanted to.
Mm.
She was doing more of like cutesy things and stuff like that before, but she was like, I didn't think I was going to look good, with like dark hair and,
Mm.
dark clothes and things like that. And I was afraid it just wasn't going to work on me. But now that I've done it, I feel so much happier and like, oh, I don't know
Yeah.
why I was ever too afraid to try it. I'm like, yes, yes,
Yes,
I support everything.
that is so awesome. I had a very interesting dichotomy growing up like that as well, because I think my mom really wanted me to be much more in line with everything else that was going on and kind of wear the clothes that the kids that were wearing. My dad, when he was growing up, was a long hair rocker guy.
Uh-huh.
And I remember this is the one time he ever said anything about my appearance, but he did it in a way that it still makes me laugh to this day, and I didn't feel judged about it. So like I have like the 00 earrings, and I've
Uh-huh.
had those since I was like 15. And when he saw those, he just went like, he just kind of laughed, and when he's like, now I know why my dad gave me that look when I had long hair. And that's all he said on it. He never judged me on it, never said like, you need to take those out or anything. But it was just
Right.
kind of one of those like, it's so funny because it was like that whole thing of like, thank you for putting it that way. Cause I know that this may not necessarily be your thing, but the fact
Right.
that you, just by doing that, have shown me like, hey, I'm still going to accept you. It's cool. You know what I mean? Not my thing, but like,
Right.
like, and just when you see people that are able to, like, especially when parents are allowing that and encouraging that in their kids,
Mm-hmm.
like that's so awesome to hear and to see, just because kind of like what we were talking about, that wasn't the norm for a long time. And I think the more people do that, the happier people are going to be and the better the world is going to be as a whole.
Right. I agree. Yeah. I think anytime, especially somebody like that, a parent or somebody can be understanding or encouraging for something that their child's doing, it really helps a lot because those kind of people mean a lot. And it just really shows that you actually are accepted too.
Yeah, definitely does.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here,
I
Derek.
I think that's a good time to end it. Yeah.
So, let people know where they can find what you've been working on.
So I can be found on Twitter and Instagram at One Line Derek. You can catch me on the See It Through podcast if you just plug in See It Through with Derek Pennington. It's on any major podcasting service: Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, a bunch of other ones that I signed up for that I can't remember off the top of my head. But you can find it there. I don't really have a regular upload schedule. I upload when the inspiration strikes, but I'm usually posting dumb memes and stuff like that on Instagram and Twitter all the time. So, if you just want some fun banter, you can follow me on there.
All right. Well, thanks again.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'll also be on an upcoming episode of his podcast called See It Through. Make sure to check the links in the descriptions to know when that episode comes out. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.